The year is 1994. Significant events in this time period include
the 6.7 earthquake that ravaged the San Fernando Valley, and the untimely deaths of Nirvana singer Kurt Cobain, rapper Tupac Shakur, and the 37th President of the United States, Richard Nixon. In the sports world, the Dallas Cowboys win the Super Bowl and the World Series is canceled due to a Major League Baseball Players Association strike.
But something else was happening in the sports world.
Standing 7 foot 1 inch, 22-year-old Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was turning heads in the basketball world. Winning Rookie of the Year for the 92-93 season, he was quickly becoming one of basketball's fastest rising stars.
Shaq's popularity was so enormous that he was approached by EA to license his name in the form of a video game. Originally, it was supposed to be a basketball game, but since EA had already licensed Michael Jordan and BARKLEY to their own video games respectively, they had to go a different route.
Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Mortal Kombat 2 were dominating the fighting game scene, revolutionizing fighting games forever.
This brings us to the meat and potatoes of this video, the unholy union between Shaq and EA mixed together, and what we got, Shaq Fu.
At the title screen, you have many modes to choose from. Let's try Story Mode since it's the main mode in this game. You have Shaq, wearing his basketball uniform, standing outside downtown Tokyo doing some sightseeing before his big charity basketball game. Notice the shameless plug-in from Pepsi. I mean, Shaq did do a Pepsi commercial prior to this game's development.
After all, Pepsi, right now.
Shaq stumbles upon a kung fu dojo with an old man inside, so he decides to check it out. The old man, who is called Liatsu in the game, which is a play on Latsu, meaning master, calls Shaq a big warrior and one from the stars. He misinterprets these comments, thinking that the old man meant all-star, but Liatsu informs Shaq that only he can enter the second world and save a boy named Nezu. Liatsu conveniently has a portal to the second world located in his dojo, so Shaq goes through the door and finds himself in the second world. So if you start at the top, you'll end up in Catwalk Falls, where your first opponent is a cat girl named Kaori. So the fight begins, and that's when you realize that the controls for this game are horrendous. The walk speed for the characters is incredibly slow. The normals are lousy. You have 4 attacks: fast punch, power punch, fast kick, and power kick. But the animations are the same, except for the startup frames. You also have the R button for taunting and the L button for move boost, which makes your normal attacks slightly stronger. It also doubles as a block button, yet they neglect to mention that.
A block button? Why would that be so important to indicate that there's a block button in a fighting game? Beats me.
Either way, it doesn't change the fact that the controls in this game are downright bad. Since the walk speed of the characters is slow, you're forced to jump at your opponent to get close and attack. Sadly, the computer is ready to air you each time that you do. Reminds me of the computer in the Mortal Kombat 2 games. There's almost nothing that you can do that the computer won't anticipate. Now, it may look like I'm purposely doing bad, but I'm trying as hard as I can to beat Kaori. Try as I might, I just can't do it. And would you believe that I'm playing in normal mode? Let's bring it down to easy for the purpose of this game review. So after dispatching Kaori, you'll make your way to the Vagabond Temple where you meet Raja the Prince. Just mash a few buttons, find a good strategy, and it'll be easy work. I found that just cornering your opponents and pressing buttons works every time. Next, you'll make your way to Gargoyle's Peak where you'll meet Mephis, or Mephis, a monstrous-looking green creature who has more jokes than magic. Tell me where the boy Nezu is before I beat it out of you. Mephis responds by saying, "Yeah, right. I'll whisper it in your ear after I slap you silly." I don't know what's more funnier about this scene. Mephis' response, or the fact that the developers of this game took the time to accurately punctuate Shaq's comments, but inaccurately punctuate Mephis' comments. Tell me where the boy, Nezu, is before I beat it out of you. Now look at Mephis' comments. "Yeah, right, I'll whisper it in your ear after I slap you silly." It should be, "Yeah, right, period," followed by, "I'll whisper it in your ear after I slap you silly."
I found a good meme online that accurately describes this point.
Grammar. The difference between knowing your shit and knowing your shit, as in you are shit. And Shaq Fu, or in this case, Shit Fu, is shit. After beating the shit out of Mephis, he leaves you with his last comments.
"Your courage is praiseworthy. beware the beast. He is as lethal as he is ugly.
The mere thought of someone who looks like this calling another person ugly. The character Beast then makes his first appearance as he brings his skeleton soldiers back to life. Don't worry, you won't fight a single one. A bridge then magically springs forth. Cross it and you'll end up at the next section of the second world. You make your way to the Lost Jungle where you fight your next opponent, Shaq's girlfriend, Voodoo. From there, that leads you to a place called Dragon's Pass, and you finally meet Beast. No, not that Beast. This one, the ugly one, who identifies himself as Set Ra's greatest servant. With all the build-up he got, you'd think he'd be the main villain. I must say though, his stage theme is rather catchy. After beating him, he says,
I will travel through time and fight you again someday. Set Ra will not let you take the boy. You will not succeed.
Wonder what he means by that. At last, you've made it to the final stage in the game called Tombstone Island, where the final boss, Set Ra, holds Nezu captive. After a lackluster fight, you win. You rescue Nezu, who decides to introduce himself and let you know you saved him as soon as both of you cross into the regular world, or the first world. Yeah. Thanks, Captain Obvious. In duel mode, it's your standard player versus computer or player versus player format. In tournament mode, you're able to make your own mini tournament, but there's one thing that bothers me. You have slots for 8 characters, yet there are only 7 characters available in the entire game. How does that make sense? It's like if you want to play a full basketball game with only 10 players. It's not going to happen. Apparently, there exists a code that turns blood on for this game. Who cares?
Shaq Fu was ported over to the Sega Genesis, or should I say the Genesis version was ported over to the Super Nintendo, and would you believe that the Genesis version is vastly superior, but that's not actually saying much?
The Genesis version actually has 5 more playable characters: Arrock, Colonel, Dizo, Liatsu, and even Nezu, the kid that you're supposed to save. It also has 3 extra stages. In story mode, much of the terrain is changed, and the 3 extra stages along with the 5 additional characters have been added. There are some inconsistencies though. At the North Gate, you're challenged by Liatsu, even though he stated in the beginning that he was too old for fighting. At the South Gate, you're challenged by Nezu himself, who is under mind control by Set Ra. But here's the problem. You originally entered the second world under the premise that you were rescuing this kid. After defeating him, and in his words, freeing him from the Dark Master, Shaq should have just grabbed the kid and gotten the heck out of Dodge. Why continue on if you have the kid already?
Well, that's about all I can take. Shaq Fu was also ported to the Game Boy, Game Gear, and Amiga systems, but I can't bear to play anymore. Not to mention that sequel that came out in 2018. All in all, this is one of the worst video games I've ever played. Probably the worst fighting game ever made. Lots of people like to bring out other bad fighting games. Rise of the Robots, Catfight, Kazumi Ninja. But here's my rebuttal. With the exception of Rise of the Robots, when you have a bad fighting game on a console that not too many people own, it kind of excuses it just enough to where it can't be considered as bad as it actually is. Not too many people own Kazumi Ninja on the Atari Jaguar when it first came out, but a lot of people, I repeat, a lot of people own Shaq Fu. Definitely. I'm willing to bet that most of us got our hands on this game the exact same way. We didn't spend money on it. We had a family member that knew nothing about video games walk into a game store, see a copy of Shaq Fu sitting at the end of an end cap there for a cheap price and said, "Hey, doesn't little Rudiger play video games? Well, this game's pretty cheap. Let's get it for him." And then they hand it over to you. You stick it inside your Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, whatever. You play it and your entire day is ruined and you are emotionally scarred for the rest of your life. That was reality for a lot of us when we were kids. And don't deny it. I mean, come on. There was even a website that existed whose sole purpose in life was to collect as many of these games as possible and destroy them. All in all, the game sucked. Good day to you.